Let's talk about some labels. I've already covered why we label in this video over here, but that still doesn't explain what you should call someone. On the spectrum? Autistic? Person with autism? Special needs? Differently abled? Well, let's start with person first versus identity first language. Which one do you use? Let's break it down. So the first option is person first language. Person with cancer, person with a broken leg, person with the flu. Do you notice a pattern? Person first language is usually used when describing a medical condition that is separate from the core characteristics of a person. You wouldn't call someone cancerous because their cancer is not a core characteristic of who they are. Now, let's try it with some other things, like person with gayness. Well, that sounds weird, doesn't it? Me being gay is not a disease and it's not separate from who I am. My experiences and outlook on the world are fundamentally different because of my sexuality. If I called myself a person with gayness, I'm pretty sure that you would be concerned that I feel like my sexuality is a disease. The same situation goes with religion. Calling myself a person with Quakerness separates who I am from my religious identity, which doesn't make sense because fundamentally it changes my worldview. So we use identity first language here because it's a core part of identity. But what about mental health and disability? This is where it gets a little bit tricky and is often specific to the community, but generally the disabled community likes identity first language because our disabilities are a fundamental part of who we are and how we interact with the world. People with bipolar disorder or schizophrenia prefer person first because these terms are often used to describe non-people things, such as a bipolar weather pattern or a schizophrenic stock market. And I shouldn't have to say this, but please don't do that. Anyway, these terms have so much cultural stigma around them as a piece of identity that most people prefer using person first rather than identity first. And a lot of mental illnesses also follow this pattern, so it's important to ask each person what they prefer. But let's go back to autism. What do we prefer? And overwhelmingly, we prefer identity first language. I'm not a person with autism. It's not a separate piece of me. It's not some horrible disease I should work to fight. It's my neurotype. It's an important piece of who I am. So I am autistic and proud to be so. Many non-autistic or allistic people try to correct me and people in the community, informing us that we should be saying a person with autism instead. And well, first of all, don't tell someone with a lived experience how to experience their lived experience. That's generally a no-go. Second of all, person with autism may feel like it's putting the person first, but to us it feels like you're trying to see us as not autistic. And fun fact, by avoiding it, you don't make it go away. You're just making us feel dehumanized and reinforcing negative stigma. And that brings us into the second bit of language, euphemisms. You know, she's differently abled, or they're on the spectrum, or he's special needs. And again, by saying these things, you're fundamentally ignoring our experience and avoiding saying the actual term because it makes you feel more comfortable. And by saving yourself that one moment of being uncomfortable by saying, oh, God forbid, disabled, you're making it 10 times harder for anyone living that experience. And you're making sure that we know that our identity is fundamentally unpleasant or embarrassing because you're uncomfortable talking about it. And that makes us feel not good. So let's break down some of these specifically. I'll start with special needs. First of all, if you've ever been in middle school, you know that this is used more as an insult than as an actual description of a person. Second of all, the idea of someone having special needs is a problem because everyone has special needs, and the idea that having special needs is only specific to disabled people reinforces the idea that you're catering to the disabled community rather than ensuring equal rights and accessibility for everyone. It dehumanizes us by making it seem like we aren't deserving of equal treatment. Then we have on the spectrum. Members of the autistic community still use this one sometimes, but we much prefer autistic because, well, on the spectrum is just a very creative way to avoid saying autistic. As if autistic is a bad word, and plot twist, it isn't. So just call your kid autistic if they are. Also, it saves time because it's less words. But of all of these, the most frustrating is differently abled and the whole idea of see the ability, not the disability, because what? Yes, I see that I have the superior ability to recognize incoming weather patterns, but I also recognize them by getting a migraine. And one of these things affects how I live my life, and the other is just a perk that I can use to convince small children that I am in fact a magical princess who can predict the weather. Not that I don't want that label, but that's not the point. This way of looking at disability reinforces the idea that limits don't exist unless we believe that they do. And that if we focus on our abilities and ignore our limits and fight against these struggles, we'll suddenly become non-disabled? And as somebody who spent many years of her life trying to fight her disability and having it make her significantly sicker, I just want to inform you that it really doesn't work, and that spending time focusing on what you can do and ignoring your limits means that you aren't spending that time and energy learning to live with your struggles and work with them. Ignoring our limits and needs won't magically make us non-disabled, it just makes us miserable. Not to mention that by saying this, you are ignoring our disabled experience and the needs that arise from it. No matter how much you avoid saying the word, it's still our daily reality. And all you're doing is reinforcing negative stigma and avoiding a fundamental piece of who we are. And this goes for autism too. You can tell us to focus on our different abilities, sure, but you still get uncomfortable when our social skills are different, and you still judge us for stimming, and all you're doing is promoting shame and nothing more. So if you needed a reminder that disabled and autistic aren't bad words, here it is. Anyway, thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next one.